Friends. I've got some free time this morning, so I thought for something a little different and lighter, we would go back again to Gypsy's first book, released Conversations on the Eve of Freedom, and read a little more of her wild descriptions of things. Because honestly, every time she's trying to explain herself and demonize Dee Dee, it feels like she is actually telling on herself most of the time. I'm going to start on page 54, a section called Becoming a Real Blanchard. When my mother denied me a father, she also denied me a sister and a brother and the dream of a nuclear family. Okay, I got to stop after that first sentence. How exactly did Dee Dee deny Gypsy a father? Rod made his choices. Nicolette's mom showed up on Dee Dee's doorstep saying, I have a baby with this man too, and I need help. And then Rod left Dee Dee for Christy. From what we understand, they had been, making out at Dee Dee and Rod's wedding. So I don't know how exactly Dee Dee is solely responsible for Rod not being in Gypsy's life. And granted, I know for a fact that Dee Dee did not have anything good to say about Rod. Well, frankly, who would at that point? From everything that we know now about Rod being in jail on their wedding day, Dee Dee's parents having to get him out, constantly, according to him, being wasted and on drugs all the time, cheating, being irresponsible, all this stuff, always in trouble. Where was the lie? I don't know that Rod physically abused a baby the way that Dee Dee said, but we also don't even know that Dee Dee actually said that because that mainly comes from Gypsy. I know Dee Dee talked about Rod's cheating, Rod not helping, Rod being a druggie and a scoundrel and blah, blah, blah. But I don't remember hearing from people who knew Dee Dee of her talking about a specific incident of Rod holding Gypsy up as a baby and physically harming her the way Gypsy describes Dee Dee saying he did. I don't know. Maybe she did, but yeah. Okay, back to the book, friends. If I were to see both of my half siblings growing, how could she avoid me giving up dolls in favor of Justin Timberlake? I remember seeing pictures of Dylan and Mia and asking my mother, how come they are getting bigger and changing and I'm not? Time seemed to pass for others, but not for me. Other people seemed to grow up and change, and I was living a life where I would stay the same. I would question how Dylan would be catching up to my age, even though he was 5 years younger than me. Okay, let's analyze this, friends, because if Gypsy actually asked Dee Dee, how come they're getting bigger and changing and I'm not? That sounds as if to me, Gypsy realized that she physically wasn't growing. Because even though in her books, she goes back and forth all the time, she likes to say sometimes that she's 5 foot or 5'2" or whatever. We know she's actually 4'11" from her Department of Corrections discharge papers. So she really didn't grow that much. She does have microcephaly. She does have scoliosis. She does have a chromosome deletion. All these things actually did cause her, it appears in my uneducated opinion, to stay smaller. So Dee Dee probably told her, because you're sick, Gypsy. What do y'all think, friends? Am I right or am I reaching? And then whenever she says, I would question how Dylan would be catching up to my age, even though he was 5 years younger than me. Oh, well, then why in other interviews did Gypsy tell us she actually didn't know that her mom was changing her age? She didn't know because Dee Dee wouldn't use numbered candles, even though we did see numbered candles at the birthday parties. Anyway, friends, I really think the age changing thing was something Dee Dee did for benefits. I don't believe personally that Gypsy ever was under the wrong impression about her age. She immediately in the interrogation was telling them, oh yeah, well, we're Hurricane Katrina victims. So my one card says this and the other card says this. She knew her age the whole time, friends. Okay, back to the book. Gypsy says, instead of answering questions like that, my mother would weaponize my brother and sister, reminding me that all my father's attention went to his new daughter and that he finally got the son he wanted. Even now in prison, I feel a desire to get to know my sister more. That's one of my goals when I get out. Mia is the younger sister by 10 years, but so much older than me in every way except biologically. I would see pictures of her going to prom and graduation, a stark reminder of how close I had come to having a normal existence. It's hard to not slip into a dark place looking at her life and mine, me in prison with no teeth or formal education. I know a lot of people who feel like that, who grew up in extremely restricted conservative environments, like I've talked about before, among the Amish and other religious groups, where a family splits up and one kid has to stay with the religious one and the other one gets to go with the one that broke away with the religion. And they see their other parts of their family living absolute normal lives. And it's like, oh my God, if only I could just be real. So I absolutely understand and get Gypsy's feeling there, but it just will never, ever excuse murder. And the more you read of her words, in my opinion, friends, the more it becomes absolutely clear that that's the only reason she murdered her. The medical stuff is a ruse, in my opinion. Okay, Gypsy says, while Mia experiments with eyeshadows and cream shimmers and lip glosses, a special occasion for me means putting my dentures in. Because my mother numbed my gums to make me drool in order to convince doctors to remove my salivary glands, my teeth decayed. Some teeth fell out on their own, while others required extraction. Okay, now the Oragel thing, I didn't have a hard time in the beginning believing that Dee Dee may have used Oragel to make Gypsy appear to have symptoms that she didn't, because using Oragel on a kid to me doesn't seem like it would actually harm them. And I've always personally believed, I know some of y'all get mad at me for this sometimes, and that's okay, because some of y'all don't believe Dee Dee did anything wrong at all. Like there was no con, there was no grifting, nothing, that it was all explainable. That's perfectly fine. And you may be right. I'm not there. I don't think that. So it was easily believable for me that Dee Dee would do something that wouldn't cause Gypsy any physical pain or actual physical harm to appear to have some symptoms to doctors, like using Oragel. But I changed my mind on that whenever I started going over Gypsy's prison documents in the email. She bought Oragel in prison. She needed Oragel in prison because of, I don't know, gum pain, tooth pain, pain from her dentures, whatever. And then she claims right off the bat that the salivary glands is what caused her teeth to rot. And we all feel 99.999% sure that was bottle rot because she liked the comfort of sucking a bottle with her specific preferred nipples because it was her comfort. And she never says Dee Dee made her do that to appear a certain way. She says, I loved it. It was my comfort and she didn't wean me. What an idiot, friends. 24-year-old blaming her mom that she sucked a baby bottle. Saying, she didn't wean me. Oh, and then look, friends, she tries to walk it back a little bit in the next sentence. Some of the medications I was unnecessarily taking also had oral side effects. So whatever the actual culprit was, my gummy smile is destined to be a permanent reminder of my abuse. When I speak to Mia, I ask her for big sister advice, like what kinds of brands are cool and questions about fashion. We know she actually gets in there and she's like, Mia, I still haven't had a big O. I need a plan B. And Gypsy says, I love my brother and sister. I look forward to being an equal to them, no longer held back from my potential. It takes effort to put the past behind me because it was so ingrained in me from early childhood to be jealous of what they had. Despite my mother lying to me that Rod had been an abusive father and telling me that she had saved me from him by running off. Now listen to this next part, friends. This always gets me. Because she said a similar thing in her new book, too, in My Time to Stand. Moving me far away from Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina was only the beginning of my mother making me an unaware yet consenting teammate in the war against my father. Making me sick was a big part of that war. If she couldn't control him with his love, she'd control him with his sympathy. This would become a pattern that worked for my mother. Okay. Gypsy says that, moving her away from Louisiana, she acts like that was part of Dee Dee's long-term plan to turn her against Rod. That was part of the whole deal. And like I said before, I'm not one who gives Dee Dee a lot of excuses whenever I see, things that she did, but I don't see how Dee Dee had any freaking choice. She had been kicked out from her family. Rod had moved on with Christy after Nicolette's mom had already come around saying, hey, he got me pregnant at the same time too. Dee Dee and Gypsy were living in Section 8 housing in Slidell when the hurricane hit and devastated the whole area. I'm sure Dee Dee was very grateful when Dr. Janet Jordan, I can't stand that woman, decided to snatch them up and foist them upon us in Southwest Missouri.
It's amazing the outpouring of love and support.
Dr. Janet Jordan met Dee Dee and Gypsy while on a mission trip to the hurricane-ravaged areas. She says she knew right away she'd see them again.
They're like lost souls who were meant to have been born and raised in Aurora.
Yeah, if you're listening, Janet Jordan, I blame you. But with the Section 8 housing that they were living in devastated, Rod on his new thing with Christy, Dee Dee's family having physically thrown them out of the house, when Dee Dee was offered the helicopter ride and accommodations in Missouri, I'm sure she was grateful as hell. I don't know what exactly Gypsy expected her to do different in that particular situation. You know, friends? Like she acts like Dee Dee just made this choice. Like, I am going to take Gypsy to Missouri where it'll be a few states away and then they won't see Rod anymore. Like Dee Dee plotted to find Janet Jordan there because Southwest Missouri just was on Dee Dee's mind. I don't freaking think so. She got an opportunity and she took it, is my opinion, friends. And it really annoys me when Gypsy acts like that was a calculated choice that Dee Dee made. No, you got hit by a freaking hurricane, one of the worst in decades. Okay, back to the book. Gypsy says, if she couldn't control him with his love, she'd control him with his sympathy. This would become a pattern that worked for my mother. Sympathy paid dividends. Sympathy could create celebrity. The friendships my mother had were one-sided friendships, the kind where one friend calls and chews your ear off about some misfortune of the day. I often overheard her telling people about my next doctor's appointment or the reaction I just had to a new medication or how broke she was that month because she was a single mother with an ex-husband who didn't care about me. And this is what I mean about the projection, friends. Sympathy paid dividends. Sympathy could create celebrity. If she couldn't control him with his love, she'd control him with his sympathy. We see Gypsy doing that with Kian, friends, all the time. Oh my God, she couldn't keep him with her just through pure love while she was incarcerated. He broke up with her and got with someone else. And whenever he saw her, actually getting a show and becoming a celebrity off that sympathy and decided to come back, Gypsy clearly never, ever lets up on reminding him that he left her alone in prison and that it was terrible. And she broke her heart. She cried her eyes out. He was going around with some Barbie, some blonde bimbo Barbie. She's controlling him with his sympathy. And when she said, sympathy can create celebrity, never heard her tell on herself more blatantly. Have you all, friends? She is absolutely constantly creating her minor celebrity status with sympathy by exaggerating everything that Dee Dee ever did. And then the one-sided friendships. We see her all the time on lives with, her little group. Has anyone ever heard him talking about anyone else in the group's problems or just Gypsy's? Gypsy says, with every person who marveled over her sacrifices and loyalty to me, she got a high. I see that now, but didn't have a clue when I was in it. Then Gypsy says, when it comes to my friends these days, I get high too, but it's because to them, I'm just Gypsy and not a chronically sick pity party. Oh yeah, Gypsy clearly gets a major high whenever she sees anyone feeling sympathetic towards her because of her stories. It's a big high for her. It's very, very obvious. And she says she gets a high from her friends, but because she's just Gypsy, not a chronically sick pity party. And she might not be as chronically sick, but she's still a chronic pity party. It's always, oh, people are bullying me by speaking truth facts instead of going with my narrative. Oh, I'm so bullied. It's always a pity party with Gypsy. Then there's a picture of Gypsy with Melissa Moore. It says, after so many months of talking on the phone, I finally got to meet Melissa in real life when she visited me at Chillicothe. She's been a constant source of friendship and advice to me this whole time. Yeah, Melissa Moore, she's sus as hell, friends. I still can't believe she took her little children to meet her serial killer, murderer father in prison after her grandpa told her that her dad at one point was considering killing her and her siblings. Melissa Moore, in my opinion, is dangerous. Like Gypsy, she aligns herself with dangerous people. And then we have a transcribed phone call between Gypsy and Melissa Moore. Gypsy talking. Hey, thank you for the photo. I love it. So cool. Melissa talking. Oh, I'm glad you like it. I know it's a good one. It was good. We should commemorate our meeting. Gypsy talking. It's not every day that a friend visits. Melissa talking. You'll make tons of friends whenever you get home. I am sure of it. Gypsy talking. I hope so. I know I'm going to focus on becoming a family with Ryan's family, and that will be good. And then with my sister and brother, that's a whole other type of relationship I'm looking to build. I know Bobby will be there too, and he's chill and fun. Melissa talking. Are you nervous about what your neighbors might think or if you will be able to, or do you have a plan for how you will meet people and make friends? It's sometimes harder in adulthood to really click, but it happens with mommy friends when kids go to school and doing things around town like the gym or work or going to school yourself. Okay, I'm breaking in here to say it's really weird, friends, that Melissa Moore is talking about mommy friends while Gypsy is in prison, obsessed with getting out and having a baby. Okay, Gypsy talking. She says, "Yeah, I hope that will happen for me, especially because I'm really outgoing and bubbly and I love to talk. I could talk to a rock if I had to. I think I make a really good friend. So I will just let it happen in its own time. I think getting involved in the community will help. And church. Church will probably be my first stop." And something I've been saying, friends, a few of y'all and some other content creator friends ask me occasionally, like, what do you think Gypsy's next big grift will be? And I always say religion. She's going to become some sort of preacher gypsy or religious inspirational speaker gypsy kind of thing. Because she hints at it all the dang time. Chapter 3 of this first book is called On God and Faith. And it starts out with Melissa Moore saying, shit. Gypsy saying, "Hello, hi, I'm here." And Melissa saying, "Hi, that was so weird." And Gypsy says, "It was telling me my pen wasn't working. I'm so sorry about that." Which honestly, friends, that probably means that she ran herself out of time sex talking with the, Italy guy or whoever and had to use another inmate's pen to call Melissa. Melissa says, "No worries, no worries. I thought it was really weird because today I was going to ask you more about your mother's interest in witchcraft and spells. So I thought maybe we cast one on the phone system or something." And then Gypsy says, being her usual cringe self, she thinks she's so funny and she's not. Gypsy says, "I'm Gypsy, but not that kind of Gypsy." Melissa says, "Oh my God, that is hilarious. Was this a prominent feature in your life growing up? The interest or practice in the occult?" See, Gypsy actually thinks that all her cringe is really funny because the people who try to get close to her to make some money gas her up and tell her it is. Oh my God, it's so hilarious. Because it's obvious to normal people. It's like, oh, ew. And then the people close to her are like, "Ah." Gypsy says, "I was actually born and raised Catholic and grew up going to Catholic Mass every Sunday with my grandparents, my mom's parents, when we lived in Louisiana. When we moved, just the two of us to Missouri, my mother would become non denominational. She actually told me, she told everyone growing up, Gypsy's going to be a nun when she grows up." Gypsy shows this picture here. It's apparently of her being christened with Dee Dee holding her. Gypsy makes a little note. She says, "I believe my grandmother Emma took this picture. I imagine she was so proud, as christening is a rite of passage for our family and a memorable moment of pride and hope." She acts like no other family does christenings or considers them special. Oh my God. Anyway, Melissa says, "For real? She really wanted you to be a nun?" Gypsy says, "She was serious. Yep. Can you imagine?" Well, we can't because we know how Gypsy is now. Honestly, I can imagine Dee Dee was probably thinking, no one's ever going to take care of this gremlin the way I do. She's going to need to be in a convent. Melissa says, "What did you think of that plan? Were you okay with it?" Gypsy says, "Well, at first I was like, okay, well, what does a nun do?" And my mom told me a nun helps the church, helps people in need. They do humanitarian work. I always had a soft spot for people and animals. And I thought the idea was appealing because humanitarian sounded good. I associated being a good person with being a nun. I wanted to be a good person. But as I grew older and figured out, wait, nuns can't get married or date or do the things as a teenager, I started to be curious about doing, especially when it came to boys. Giggle. I thought on second thought, this sounds not for me. Then Melissa points out the very obvious and says, "But you said your mother was practicing non denominational, not practicing Catholicism." Now, this is a very interesting reply from Gypsy friends, and I'm going to tell you my thoughts on why right after I read it. Gypsy says, "We bounced around a lot. I think she was kind of exploring, like how you do when you're exploring your identity. We went to several different Christian churches when we left Missouri and moved near New Orleans." Big error here. I swear to God, they didn't proofread anything in her books, like they don't even care about them. Because obviously they left Louisiana to move to New Orleans, but it says, "We went to several different Christian churches when we left Missouri and moved near New Orleans," which is totally backwards. Okay. Gypsy says, and then stayed non denominational, even going to some really wonky churches while in New Orleans. And when we moved to Slidell, Louisiana, I've actually been baptized 7 times in my life, 5 before the murder, 1 time when I got to county, and the last time when I got to Chillicothe. I just never felt clean. Okay, what's interesting to me about that is Dee Dee was switching to a lot of different churches. In my opinion, from observation, from, like I've told y'all many times, I lived in Aurora, Missouri at the same time as them before they got their habitat house. Never met them, but my friends and family did. And I sure watched everything go down from a very close distance. It seemed clear to me Dee Dee was always switching churches because she would kind of run through all the benefits and gifting that one church had to offer. And suddenly she needs to be saved at a new one. And I feel like the reason why Gypsy doesn't just say that is because she does the same thing. I think if she said that, the people in those churches would probably call out Gypsy's own behavior in those churches as an adult sitting there in that wheelchair. And also, we know that this pattern wasn't specific just to Dee Dee. When after Gypsy got out, at one point after the whole blow up with her and Ryan, her, Christy, Rod, everybody, the whole family, they all got baptized again together, starting over their new religious life. It's just a pattern. Gypsy blames all these things on Dee Dee, but she's still doing them, friends. What do y'all think, friends? Am I right or am I reaching? Let me know in the comments. Melissa says, before the murder, you never felt clean? Why didn't you feel clean? Gypsy says, I just never felt like I get clean enough. Getting baptized was about renewal. I felt clean every time. Every time I felt like a bad person, I'd want to get baptized. Like, little things made me feel bad. If I would tell her a lie, keep a secret from her, small things, if I talked back to her, I'd want to get baptized. Growing up with a mom who had schizophrenia, who saw shapes and shadows and heard voices, I felt like my mom had a judgment of me when she would be listening to the voices in her head. She told me, there are 8 voices in my head and 7 of them don't like you. I thought being as clean as possible would get her to accept me. But by the time we got to Springfield, we were back to being Catholic. Hey friends, I've got to break in here in the editing process real quick to ask a question. Have any of us ever heard anyone besides Gypsy Rose and I think maybe Bobby Petrie say that Dee Dee had schizophrenia? I don't remember hearing anyone in Southwest Missouri that I know that knew her talk about Dee Dee saying that she had schizophrenia. Dee Dee would tell people that even though she's a Christian now, that she has a voodoo past and she's into witchcraft. She would show her wizard and pentagram tattoo, and she would say that she had visions and did spells. Being into Wicca, voodoo, and occult stuff like that, and believing that you see visions is not the basis of a diagnosis for schizophrenia. Otherwise, Gypsy Rose has it too. The time period that Gypsy is describing, she says, we went to really wonky churches in New Orleans and Slidell, but she also says that Dee Dee insisted on having a Madonna in their Slidell yard. They were only in Aurora for like maybe 2.5 years. It was from right after Katrina until 2008 when they got their habitat house. So if she was already back to being Catholic by the time they moved to Springfield, that wasn't a very long time period to be moving around getting baptized so much. Then in the next page, Gypsy has a picture of herself in her first communion dress. And the section is called, Are You There, God? It's me, Gypsy. And about her picture, she says, I was so proud to be wearing this dress for my first communion. It was crocheted by my great aunt Thelma, who was Mumsy Emma's sister. Of all my cousins, I was the only grandchild who named Mumsy this term of endearment. Growing up, I felt so close to my mother and grandmother. Momsy is the closest to mommy without being the same. When I read that description, I had to wonder if the ghostwriters left it in there just because they knew that people would be like, what the actual hell are you doing? Talking so much about mommies when you're known for murdering yours. Very weird, friends. Okay, here's the part I was just referring to. Gypsy says, in Golden Meadow, Louisiana, everyone had a shrine of the Virgin Mary on their lawn. Wikipedia actually has a whole entry on the bathtub Madonna, which is predominant in Cajun portion of South Louisiana. People cut a bathtub to use as a backdrop for the statue. Bathtubs for my mom and me did not represent purity as the Virgin Mary does. Dirty things happened to my mother in the bathtub, but she still had a statue welcoming us as we pulled into the driveway. It's interesting that Gypsy says, bathtubs for my mom and me did not represent purity, But yet we know later on she would go to specifically tell Ryan and Kian both in emails from Chillicothe that she must have a clawfoot bathtub. There is no better way to relax after a hard day's work, as if she's ever done a hard day's work. Then Gypsy says, when my mother put me in vacation Bible school where she'd work as a volunteer, she bought plastic mini statues of the saints, like St. Joseph and St. Agnes from the gift shop. I already thought I was going to be a nun, so I made an altar in my bedroom where I placed the saints. I aligned my stuffed animals as a congregation along with my cats, and we'd all attend little church. I was the priest. I led us all in prayer and gave out communion, feeding crackers and grape juice to my cats. Oh, God, friends. I hope she didn't force feed them because I don't see cats going after crackers much or grape juice. Have any of y'all? And Gypsy says, as each year passed and another surgery was performed, my childhood innocence was replaced with the ability to observe and make connections about my mother's behaviors and what she instructed me to do or say. I was taught to live a life of lies and deception, which made me feel sinful and burdened with a feeling of filth. I've got to break in and ask again, real quick, friends. Gypsy just said, she was trained to keep up the lies and deception. But if we're to believe her story that she didn't realize that she wasn't sick until her lawyers told her, then what exactly was she keeping up the lie and deception about? She makes no freaking sense and contradicts herself all the time, friends. We'd go to church every week and I'd pray to God to send me a blessing to make all the ickiness go away, but no blessing came. I was mad at God because I'd ask him in church and before bed and in my head over and over, God, make this tormenting hell stop. Please help. But there was no help in sight, at least not in my sight. I lost my faith. By the time the murder happened, I didn't have God in my life at all. I didn't believe in anything or anyone. See, this doesn't make any sense to me, friends, because she said over and over she didn't understand that she wasn't sick and wasn't being abused. So, what exactly was she asking God to stop? And Gypsy says, my faith and trust no longer in God. I opened myself up to putting blind faith and trust into Nick. When I got to Greene County Jail, I had zero faith in myself and did not trust my ability to judge people. After I was betrayed in jail by an inmate who pretended to befriend me, I became really scared. I was more alone than I had ever been, potentially digging a deeper hole for myself as we awaited trial. I needed something bigger than myself to call upon. And so, for the first time in a very long time, I prayed. My prayers sounded more like a desperate begging. Please, God, please help me. I'm so scared, God. I don't know what to do. I don't know what is happening. Why is this happening? Please, God, I'm so sorry. Please send me a blessing. Then Melissa Moore says, do you think your prayers came true, that a blessing did come? Gypsy says, I think it did. I think that when they offered me a plea deal, that was my blessing. It was God forgiving me and giving me a second chance. I fully expected to die in prison. And then comes this blessing of a 10-year sentence. That was my sign, the sign that I was going to be okay. Melissa Moore says, so you regained your faith again? Gypsy says, yes, it wasn't just a faith in God. It was a faith, a hope that I felt for the first time in my life. Melissa says, is that when you got baptized again? Gypsy says, well, when I first got to county jail, I just wanted that clean feeling. Melissa says, maybe this time by clean you meant absolved? Were you looking for absolution? Gypsy says, yes, there was no confession there. So I think baptism was my form of confession and asking for forgiveness. When I got to Chillicothe after I realized God's blessing to me, I was baptized one more time, the seventh time. But I still struggled back and forth with God and keeping my faith. I've looked in other places and other religions to strengthen my faith. I think for Gypsy Rose Blanchard, one of the reasons why she is so arrogant and entitled, in spite of the fact that she pled guilty to matricide, is that she really believes that that plea deal was a sign from God that she is forgiven and absolved. She does not care, friends. I'm going to go ahead and stop and edit there. The next section is called Maybe I'll Become a Witch, and it's about her little Wiccan phase, which, frankly, in my opinion, friends, there is nothing at all wrong with being a Wiccan. Gypsy is just not good at anything. We'll go out with a little palate cleanser, friends. I hope everyone's having a good day. Let me know what y'all think in the chat.